All right, it looks like we're technical difficulty free now and back. So welcome back, everyone. So we defeated the motion to go into closed, and now we're looking at the amendment. So we're going to vote on that. And moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to the next council meeting covering the status of the action items and recommendations related to the third-party workplace investigation report presented to council by Mr. John Curtis at the special closed council meeting held on June 4th, 2020, and that the report detailed the suspension action by the mayor adhered to the Municipal Act and all applicable workplace policies and legislation, and that the report detail whether the actions taken by council on February 10th resolution were validated in the opinion of the investigator. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I apologize. I had some issues here at my house, but I'm back on. So that I didn't get the opportunity to ask some questions. So this resolution we're voting on, will a report from the clerk be brought up in closed session? That's my question.
Yes, it will be.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, the first part of Councillor of the amendment, no one would be able to speak to it. Even in previous reports that we've had, all you have is previous case law. The only thing that would happen here is, again, nobody can speak to it because we'd have to go through the courts. And again, the second part of that, I believe, is reconsideration of a motion that because the report is to be kept confidential. So therefore, I will not be supporting this motion as amended. I will support the original motion, but as this amended, I will not be supporting it.
Well, why don't we vote on this as it is now, and then we can see where that leads and move on from there. So I'll read the resolution. It'll be a recorded vote. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to the next council meeting covering this.
Mayor Jordan, can I ask you to split the motion?
Pardon? Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to ask to have the motion split.
Okay, so how do we do that? So you want to split the amendment, but
I believe
Yes.
I believe that was my motion, Mayor.
Robert's rules says anybody can split a motion because we don't have to vote on two things. Because if I agree with part but not the other part, then so it would be unfair to ask me to vote on both issues in the same motion. So any member can ask to have a motion split, because that way I can express my vote on one issue and on the other issue rather than one vote on both issues.
yeah, so why don't we split them into part one and part two then, on the bottom part of that resolution, if that's okay with the clerk. So we'll just vote on that. So I'll read everything and then we'll vote. I'll call the first part number 1 and the second part number 2, and then we'll move on from there. So moved by Councillor Bothwell, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to the December council meeting covering the status of the action items and recommendations related to the third-party workplace investigation report presented to council by Mr. John Curtis at the special closed council meeting held on June 4th, 2020. And part 1 would be, and that the report detailed the suspension action by the mayor adhered to the Municipal Act and all applicable workplace policies and legislation. So we can vote on that one separately. Yeah, I think he wants to split these two, I believe. Well, that's just this though.
Yeah. So I think we need clarification.
All right. Apparently, Councillor Sharp, you want to split the mayor portion and the council portion. Is that correct?
I think he wants to split my motion separately from.
Yeah, I want to vote separately on Councillor Freak's motion, and
But
then
But
and then on Councillor.
Councillor Frake's motion will just be the next motion we vote on if this is defeated. You see what I mean?
Okay, we're voting on the amendment right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to clarify, we can't split the original motion because the amendment added to the main motion. So we're voting on the amendment, and then once that conclusion of that, we'll be voting on the main motion, which is Councillor Frake's motion as is.
Sorry, that's my mistake. So the way I understand it now is we are voting on whether to include Councillor Bothwell's 2 paragraphs. And if this is defeated right now, then we won't include Councillor Bothwell's 2 paragraphs.
Yes, and then we'll be voting
Then
on
we'll vote
Councillor.
separately on the first part.
Okay, so if I vote to defeat this, then it won't add the Councillor Bothwell part. But then immediately afterwards, I'll be allowed to vote on the original motion from Councillor Freak.
Yes.
Sorry, that was my fault. It's a little confusing, I know, sorry.
All right, so I'll read this resolution again. Moved by Councillor Bothwell, seconded by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to the December council meeting covering the status of the action items and recommendations related to third-party workplace investigation report presented to council by Mr. John Curtis at the special closed council meeting held on June 4th, 2020. And that the report detail if the suspension action by the mayor adhered to the Municipal Act and all applicable workplace policies and legislation. And that the report detail whether the actions taken by council in the February 10th resolution were validated in the opinion of the investigator. It's a recorded vote.
Please clarify, Mayor Jordan. This is the motion on the last, this is the motion to amend?
This is the amended motion, yes.
So if this is defeated, then we'll go back to the original motion.
That's correct.
We're not voting down the original motion right now. We're only voting down the amended portion of the motion.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
No.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell,
No.
Councillor Ritchie,
No.
Councillor Sharp,
No.
Councillor Vane,
No.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's defeated.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, that's defeated.
Now we move to the original resolution. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to council covering the status of the action items and recommendations related to the third-party workplace investigation report presented to council by Mr. John Curtis at the special closed council meeting held on June 4th, 2020. Councillor Sharp?
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. So I support this motion, and so there was recommendations from that report, and we'd like to see whether or not those recommendations have been carried out. I think that the amendment that I just voted down bordered on disclosing the confidential portions of the report, and so I would vote in favor. I'd like to see where we're at, like the status of this, and so I know that sometimes it's hard to understand what we're doing. We have like a motion within a motion, and then the newspaper will sometimes say like, oh, they did this and they did that, and make it seem like I might be doing something against what the public interest is, but I'm not. And so I'll be voting in favor. I would like to see this report, and I'd like to remind my colleagues and the people that I represent that the report itself is confidential. It's a personnel matter. It has many identifiable individuals in it. We interviewed a lot of people through an investigator, and we can't talk about that. It's not fair, and it's against the law. So to bring portions of the report out, that's because it's a 650-page report. and we've all read it. And to bring portions of it out into the public, but not the full report out, you can, if you look at it only at one spot, you might think, oh, that means this. But it has to be read in its entirety, and we can't do that because it's confidential. So when my colleague, Councillor Bothwell, brings this motion to tell us whether this means this and that means that, I voted that down because when you look at in a silo at only one area, you might get confused, and to show you all the rest of it would be a breach of the privacy of our staff and a breach of the Municipal Act. And so I'm really not comfortable with the way that motion was brought, that amendment to the motion. And
We've already covered it.
But I just wanted to, so I don't want people to think that I'm not voting in the public interest. And I don't like when my colleagues bring a motion suggestive of this is what's best for public interest, knowing full well that it is not legal for us to bring personnel matters in open session. And then when I vote it down, because I mean, it's wrong and you can't do that, then the newspaper might write, Dave Sharp doesn't support this. Dave Sharp thinks that. And so these inferences about me, you know, I'm a lifelong resident. I grew up here, and I care about the people that live here, and I care about.
Mayor, can we just move on?
Councillor Freak, please mute your microphone.
Point of order, Councillor Frake. Councillor Sharp.
We're getting close. Where's the bell, Mayor Jordan? Just give me a minute and I'll close this.
Okay.
So, I mean, my apologies for that, but I do care about these things, and I know that some people might make they make it seem like it's something else, and it's unfair. And so I just wanted to say that out loud, and I will support this motion, Councillor Freak. We do need to know the status of the report, but I think it's going to come in closed session, and I think that amendment would have come in closed session, and we've all already heard it. So we're kind of spinning our wheels. We're also going to bring a lawyer to that, and that lawyer costs like $500 an hour, maybe $350 an hour. I don't know, but if he's there for 2 hours waiting for us to get in, it's $1,000, and that's like a quarter of my taxes for the year and a quarter of someone else's taxes for the year. And we've already discussed this in closed session. Council already knows the answer to the two questions that Councillor Bothwell brought in that amendment, and we don't need to spend $1,000 to have a lawyer come in here and bring it back to us in closed, which is the right thing to do, for the chance to file some freedom of information request through the newspaper to bring it into open. And that I'm not comfortable with the way that amendment was brought. And I want to say out loud that I think that I'd like that to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Frake.
I don't think we needed that lecture, but I'd like to call the question because I think it's pretty clear what we want to do here, and I think we just need to move on with it. So I'd like to call the question, please.
Great, the question's been called. Recorded vote, so the clerk will read that.
I haven't had an opportunity to speak, so I don't think you can call the question until everyone who wants to has had at least one go, right?
I think we vote on the called question.
Yeah, it's a 2/3 vote to call the question, so.
Do I get an opportunity to speak, Mr. Mayor?
Well, it depends how the vote goes, quite honestly. The clerk is compiling the
I didn't.
resolution.
Could you just clarify? Everyone has to have at least a turn to speak who wants to before the question can be called.
If the question's called in our procedural bylaw, we vote on it, and if we have a 2/3 majority, then it can be called at that point. We need a seconder on the calling the question. Councillor Ritchie. Moved by Councillor Frank, seconded by Councillor Ritchie. Resolved that the question be called in regards to the motion on third-party investigation report status update. Recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell,
No.
Councillor Dunstall,
No.
Councillor Frank,
No.
Councillor Cadwell,
No.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
I already had my chance to talk, so I say yes.
Councillor Vane,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy.
No.
Myself, I'm a no, so that is defeated. So Councillor Vardy, you're up now.
I would just like to make the statement that I believe that this report or a redacted version of it should be made public, that it's in the public interest. We're always talking around it. And I just think a redacted
Mayor Jordan.
copy of this
Yeah,
report
that's
should
the
be
point
made.
of order, Councillor
Thank
Vardy.
you.
Can I call the question again?
We'll just vote on it now.
I'll second that.
There's no more speakers.
So, recorded vote, Councillor Bothwell,
And we're voting on Reg's original motion, correct?
yes. Would you like it reread?
I think it would be good because it's different from mine.
Sure. The mayor's going to read.
Yeah, sorry about that. Moved by Councillor Frick, second by Councillor Bothwell. Resolved that the clerk be directed to present a report to council at our December meeting covering the status of the action items and recommendations related to the third-party workplace investigation report presented to council by Mr. John Curtis at the special closed council meeting held on June 4th, 2020. So recorded vote.
Yes.
Councillor Dunstall,
Yes.
Councillor Frake,
Yes.
Councillor Cadwell,
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Councillor Sharp,
Yes.
Councillor Vane, Councillor Vane,
Sorry, I'm a yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
that's carried.
Now we move to section 10.2, report PA 20-24, staff supplementary report, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision applications 362 and 398 North Service Road. Antonetta, welcome Antonetta.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Just, here we are.
Hi, Antonetta.
Hi, Bill. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick overview. So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, colleagues, and everyone tuning in tonight. Since September 21st, council has had the opportunity to get more information on items requested of the above noted application, as well as tour the site. With council's direction, we wanted to note that anything that came out of those sessions, we would be happy to make available to the public. This evening, however, we wanted to make clear what is before council. So let's see, there we go. So what is for consideration tonight? The draft official plan amendment, the draft zoning bylaw amendment, subject to conditions, which include the sale of Winston Road right-of-way, the stream corridor block revisions, and determination and inclusion of community benefits. These are, of course, abbreviated for the purposes of the slide. The third piece is the draft plan approval of the subdivision, also subject to a series of conditions. Please note that the draft zoning bylaw is not being passed tonight. So we also wanted to outline what has changed from the staff report recommendations from the last time you saw the report and this time. For ease of reference, we've taken the previous recommendations on the left column, number 3, and added what has been amended on the right column. Also, for ease of reference, the part that has changed is bolded. So as you can see, the first part of the statement remains the same, but we have added what is in dark, bolded, in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Act and applicable town policy. This is the condition that pertains to the purchase of lands from the town to facilitate the realignment of the road. We thought it would be prudent to act that should all be done in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Act and town policy. The other recommendation that has been changed, sorry, I'm trying to get to the next slide here. Oh, too many. Okay, so again, similar situation. On the left, we have the previous recommendation. This time it's recommendation number 5. And on the right, you can see the amended version of that. What you can see has been added is what's in bolded. And it says, and the community benefit is included in the bylaw in accordance with the provisions of section 9.4 of the official plan. This relates to the community benefit agreement, and we just wanted to make it explicitly clear how we've changed the recommendations. So I believe there's one more. The arrow doesn't go. Hang on a second. There we go. Added to the draft bylaw, we have the following in quotations. The amount for section 37 community benefits contribution comprises of a cash contribution, and we have that blank because it is yet to be determined, and will be used towards blank community benefits in Grimsby, Ontario. And that's blank because ultimately the community decides what the benefit will be. So we'll go to next. So that's the end of the staff portion. We also wanted to say that with us tonight, we have Mr. Paul Lowe's, our peer reviewer for the report, who has prepared a memo that you have before you on the community benefit agreement and those guidelines. And we thought it would be good for all of council to see how that works. And Paul can speak to that and speak to its applicability here. And then also available is Mr. Lasani and his team to answer any questions that council might have. So I hope that brief introduction made it clear what it is we're chatting about tonight and what's up for what is on council's agenda for consideration, and also that we've brought some resources to you that may be helpful. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Mr. Lowe's. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. Antonetta, your director of planning, asked me to prepare this memo, basically summarizing what work we had previously done for you to implement section 37 in the official plan. So it briefly summarizes the official plan, policies, and summarizes implementation guidelines and how it could be used to apply to the fifth wheel application. And I'll just touch on a couple of key points. What's very important is that council, as set out in the policies and the guidelines, council must be satisfied that the proposed development exhibits good planning principles consistent with the intent of the official plan. This is very important. To do otherwise, the public may be concerned that you're dealing in let's make a deal planning. And I think that was a criticism before of council and why we prepared the revised policies and the implementation guidelines. So really what it sets out is in effect a two-step approval process. First, approval of the application by council in principle based on council being satisfied with the merits of the application. Once you are satisfied with the merits of the application, then the second step is to negotiate a section 37 community benefit with the applicant and then implement that through your zoning bylaw. Once you're satisfied with the merits of the application, two things must occur. First, as set out in implementation guidelines, you're to strike a working group, and that's to be formed The details are in the implementation guidelines. I won't go through that with you. And secondly, you must establish what the monetary value of the uplift is due to the proposed rezoning. And that's done through an appraisal. So the applicant will hire an appraiser. They will do that appraisal and determine what the uplift is caused by the zoning. From that, then you'll have the value of the uplift. The guidelines set out then how you take that and use it with working with your working group to identify appropriate community benefits. You negotiate with the developer, establish those community benefits. Once they're established, the realm of those, the value of those, then you can put that in your zoning bylaw. This zoning bylaw will come back to council for final approval with that in. So I hope that has helped to clarify the process, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions from council? Councillor Frake?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Paul, just a quick question on the. Tell me how does the working group formed and how does it work? What's the parameters for the working group? How does that come together? How do you pick them? How do you select the people?
Oh, it's a local councillor and anybody else that you want. You can ask for volunteers. The implementation guideline says it could be struck at the earliest open house, but you can do it anytime. Get volunteers from your community or whoever council wants to sit on that. And the parameters are really what you're to do is identify what community benefits are most important. It can start with the town staff identifying some needs in the community for what the community benefits could be. And the working group will look at those needs and determine what those needs are, both whether they should happen immediately in the neighborhood, other places in the town.
So the selection of community folks or residents can be the community at large or obviously the immediate area under which is going to be affected.
Best to have immediate area, but there's no limitations on that. It's really up to council.
Is it recommended to have staff and or counselors on that as well?
Counselors, yes. Staff should be a resource. So staff should be there to help and be a resource.
Okay, I just don't want, I mean, we want the right mix of people on that, obviously on that work group, but we also don't want too many politicians on it either. So I don't know. I don't know who's responsible or who's tasked with constructing that group and who they will report into.
It should be your staff that help you identify who could be on that, and then council identify those and agree to those individuals.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Councillor Cadwell.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan, through you to Paul. I really like the idea of the working group involving the community. So from your experience, Paul, is there a number that plays in? Is it, is it 12? Is it 8? I'm just a little concerned that I think we need some guidance on this for sure, because we don't want to get too large of a working group where, then some people can't make some meetings, whatever. But yeah, do you have any experience, Paul? You can comment to the size of the working group that would work very well. Thank you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't remember if the implementation guideline sets out a number, but the councillor is correct. You don't want too many people to make it unwieldy. When these types of things, my experience is usually around 8 or 10, maybe a little higher, but you don't want it too big. And I apologize if there was a number in the implementation guidelines. I don't have them open right now, but I could look.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan, and thank you, Mr. Lowe's, again for the clear explanation. I just maybe you can help me again understand or remind me that I thought that the Section 37 benefits are to be used in the immediate community to help negate for the negative, to help for the negative impact that's on that affected community, and that those funds are supposed to be targeted for capital improvements or facilities within that neighborhood. And then if I thought there was something about and I might be confusing with Parkland Dedication. After 2 years, if those funds aren't expended, then they could be looked at to be used in other areas of the municipality. But I'm just concerned because the reason that this money or this agreement is negotiated is to provide some type of a benefit to those directly impacted. And I think we have a couple of other developments that have contributed also so far. We have 100 from Odyssey and 200 from LJM, I believe. So we have a pot of money now that I just want to confirm, is it supposed to be targeted for the direct community?
There's no, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, there's no laws on it. I believe in the implementation guidelines, we recommended that to be in the immediate community because it, of course, those are the people that should benefit from the change. But it also could be used broader if council so desires, but certainly in the immediate community would be a benefit. It's up to council though to determine what is the immediate community and how does that relate to the immediate community. And I think that's best for the working group to consider.
And there's no risk that we could lose because of the change that's coming out with community benefits, that this Section 37 agreement would remain in force, or if the building permit's not issued, is there some way that if this isn't closed up and tied up in a certain period of time that we could lose out on this benefit because of the new bill?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be a question to ask a lawyer. That is a legal question that I would recommend that you find out because I don't know on the legal aspects of that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So I agree that this committee should be comprised mostly of members from the community. I think that's obvious, the reasons for that. But to just play the devil's advocate and point out a reasonable situation where you might want someone or might have someone who's not from the community. In this neighborhood, we have the waterfront trail. And so some of the community benefits we might get, maybe it's a public washroom, or maybe it's like a pier, or maybe it's an addition to the trail in some way. I don't know, but so someone you might want, another community member, might be like the chair of a runners club or something. Somebody who, there's going to be a 5-kilometer loop around like the lake back on the service road. So someone who's like really actively involved in the town, part of a runners group or club, might be a reasonable person, depending on how many members we have and how much interest we have. Other things that might affect the community is traffic, right? And the traffic might affect people that are closer to Olive Street and people that are on Kerman Avenue North. And like, so if one of the community benefits is like a stoplight or something, so I'm not trying to point to say that it has to be, but there could be other people that might have interest in the community, not just the residents who live there. Anyways, I think that the committee is probably going to be made up of Councillor Bothwell and myself because we're the ward representatives there, and 5 community members. I'm not sure if it's 5 total, including, or 5 plus, and I'm open to changes to that too. But I think personally that would be a good makeup, and I think that that it's a good way to get input from the community, and we have to do this in a starting now. So if there's anybody out there who is interested, please contact me or Councillor Bothwell or our town staff, and we can give you more information when we know more. Thank you.
Councillor Vardy.
Can you tell me if community benefits could also include, say, money towards the new fire station or monies to supplement the library or art gallery, some kind of broader community function?
Through you, Your Worship, to the councillor, that it can be fairly broad ranging in other municipalities. Usually not to something you would get cover your development charges. So like a fire hall would probably be covered by development charges. A culture, any form of culture could be in that, such as arts, library, local library, whatever. So it can be fairly broad ranging. It's a community, it's a benefit to the community.
It's not Brandon's.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if it's helpful, we just pulled up the guidelines and it says town staff, the applicant, the town alderman, and 5 to 10 neighborhood residents. And, you know, Walter and I have been talking about this for a while, and we also discussed maybe reaching out to the people who joined us for the open houses. So I think the thinking's aligning, it's supported by the guidelines that are put together as well. So just reading from the guidelines to help clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonetta. Any more questions from council? Seeing none, I'll read the resolution. I mean, the mover and seconder first. Oh, Councillor Bothwell.
I just wondered if we're supposed to be asking questions about the entire agenda item at this point and the attachments.
Just getting a clarification from the clerk on that. There's no other resolution, is there? What we'll do is we'll put this resolution on the table and then we'll have discussion on that. So that will include discussion on everything here. Right, so we need a mover and seconder. Councillor Frake, Councillor Cadwell. I'll read the resolution and then we can discuss. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that report PA 20-24 regarding staff supplementary report, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications be received, and that the drawn boundary of Block 5 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision which conflicts with the stream corridor be resolved with changes to Block 9 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision to the satisfaction of the town, region, and NPCA, and that the developer purchase lands from the town to facilitate the realignment of the road right-of-way and dedicate those lands within the proposed new public road to the town, and to purchase lands forming the old Winston Road right-of-way to combine with blocks 1 and 2 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Act and applicable town policy, and that an official plan amendment in the form attached as Appendix C to the peer review report be approved, and that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 362 and 398 North Service Road, generally in the form set out in Appendix A, and as shown on figures 3 and 4 in the peer review report, be approved in principle, and that the reading of the bylaw occur once recommendations 2 and 3 are met and the community benefit is included in the bylaw in accordance with the provisions of section 9.4 of the official plan, and the draft plan of subdivision be approved subject to the draft plan conditions set out in Appendix B to the peer review report. Questions? Comments? Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. So yes, we've had some extensive discussions with the developer, and I appreciate the time that they've taken to bring us out on site and explain their vision, and how it also meshes with what the community wants with respect to the waterfront and access to the waterfront, public access. And I appreciate the efforts they're making to work with us to ensure that we have appropriate parking. And a couple of the variations that came back to us since the last meeting were to provide additional parking spaces for the public along the Winston Road facing the new park area. And I think there's some excellent ideas on how we can incorporate additional parking for the public. And I hope we move forward with that. This is more a question for staff. What I just would like if Antonetta could answer it seems that we're receiving more of these in principle types of ZBAs where we're approving them in principle and the bylaw comes later. So a couple questions. That's one is why are we seeing so many of these now? And is that pretty standard from a planning perspective? In other municipalities, do they use this tool of in principle, which is not in the Planning Act? And I just wondered if legally there's other municipalities using this as frequently as we seem to be. The second question is, what's the next step? And from what I understand, the next step, if we approve this tonight, and I know that it's going to go towards meeting those conditions and then the bylaw will come back to us, but is the next step site plan? And I just, if you could clarify, we still have a lot of opportunity to work with the developer to refine the site plan and look at how it all comes about from what we're seeing tonight. Just not changing what's in the ZBA or the OPA, but just refining those things, little things like parking and just ensuring the use of the green space and things like that. So if Antonetta could just confirm what the next step from here is, that would be great. Thank you.
Antonetta?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the answer to the first question, why so many in principles, I can assure you that they are quite common and appropriate. They're used across the GTA. And, happy if you need examples of them to provide you them, that they are appropriate. What are some of the next steps? We have the detailed subdivision and engineering drawings that we need to receive and look at. We also need to work through all of the conditions and everything that's said on that report. There were a fair number of them. We also need to work on the municipal land portion and getting that properly assessed through the appropriate channels of our town policies and the Municipal Act. So those would be the next steps before we got to later phases of the project. Site plan.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you. It does. Thank you. And I just want to thank Mr. Lusani for all his efforts and his team's efforts in working with us to get it to where we are today. Thank you very much.
Seeing no further questions, yes, thank you, Fred, and thank you, William. And it was really nice you inviting us out there and seeing the lay of the land out there and getting a much better perspective of how much public space there's going to be out there. Councillor Sharp, you have a comment or question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Jordan. My question to town staff. So I'm looking at the report on my computer and I've seen this a couple times, but so the first building at the by the old entrance to the fifth wheel, how many stories? That one is 22 stories, and the next one is 14 stories. The next one is 12 stories, and then is there? And then 12 stories, and then 14 stories, and then 14 stories. So we've got 22, and then 14, and then 12, and then 14, and then 14. Sorry, can you just tell me the order of and how many stories? And so I know that 12 stories is allowed in that neighborhood, and it looks like almost all of the buildings are 14 stories, except 2, and 1 is 22 stories. So we've got 3 of the 6 buildings conforming with the height, 2 of them that are 2 stories over, and 1 of them that is 22 stories. Can you confirm that? And then I have a few more questions and comments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we think that's generally right, but we'd prefer the applicant to confirm that. I don't have the drawings right in front of me. Can someone, either Dave or Mr. Lusani, confirm that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that the succession of buildings from west to east, and perhaps Dave Aston, who's online, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they are 22, 18, 16, 16, 14, 14.
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Great, thanks for the clarification. Councillor Sharp, you have some more questions?
Yeah, so that clarifies it. So we've got a 22 and an 18 as the first pair of buildings. We have two 16-story buildings as the second pair, and then we have two 14 stories is the third pair, 6 buildings total. So they're all a little bit over what we allow, although 12 stories is allowed. And, but one of the things I liked, and thank you to Lasani for taking us out on site. One of the things that we talked about is there's some lay-by parking on Winston Road, and it's like parallel parking to the road. But they're gonna. I think we talked about turning that parking perpendicular, and it makes about twice as much, or maybe more than twice as much parking. And then the parking lot faces the lake. So, point of privilege, Mayor Jordan. Could you ask councilors to mute? I'm hearing a lot of background noise, and it's distracting me. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
it looks like everyone's muted.
Oh no, thanks. It's just was distracting. So what I was talking about was the parking that was originally lay-by parking, and if it gets turned perpendicular, and the nice thing about that is that it adds a lot more parking there for public to come down and use the waterfront trail, and it also faces the lake. So like, you know, I work in town, and some of the guys that I work with, they go and get like a whatever, like drive-through lunch, and then they'll go and park like at various spots and just kind of sit in the car and eat just to get away from the office and change the scenery. And so what a great spot to go and sit if you're going to park, you know, at noon or 11:30 or 12:30 or whatever your lunch, to grab something to eat, or maybe even bring your own lunch, and you just go and sit, right? In the summer, it's nice. In the winter, you can have your heat on in your car. You know, and then if we ever get to the point of where we're doing like a waterfront festival or something, we might have fireworks down there, and like, so you could be sitting in your car. Like I can back my minivan in there, open the door, and let my kids sit on a blanket in the back on New Year's Eve for like a fireworks show. And that's a really cool concept. And so I really think that that's a benefit to the community. And we talked already with the developer, and I talked about that, my approval of that. And so I hope to see that actually happen. My question to town staff is, do we know, and when will we know if that is a reality?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, just confirming with Walter, that would come through the detailed subdivision plans. But that's something that, you know, we're supportive of, I think, and also in discussions with Sarah Sweeney, that would be helpful from a Parks and Recreation lens as well. So we're very thankful that those kind of conversations emerged and that we were able to find potentially a solution that meets the community's needs.
Would the developer commit to that, or in general commit to something like that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we proposed that solution, which would have added approximately another 40 spaces to the already 40 spaces committed. And in discussions with town planning staff, they came back with an idea of the possibility of being able to have a provision within the plan if we chose to go lay-by first and then modify later on once the demand for it would present itself, if it did. But we're agreeable to committing to that for sure. We absolutely are. We think it's very beneficial. We think ultimately that trail is going to be able to attract a number of individuals, and we feel that the community should have the benefit of having access to parking. I agree with your comments.
Okay, thank you, and I appreciate that you brought that. I mean, you know, anybody can think of that, right? It's a simple solution, but these things, they get missed, and like it's a little thing. I'm sure it's small to you, small to us, but a big benefit for the community. And yeah, so the other thing, I forget. So that's all for my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. Just comment. And I want to thank Mr. Lasani's team, also town staff, for organizing the outing that we were able to participate in, walking along the property at the waterfront area, sorry. And to see that the properties, the buildings were staked out and taped out, give us a bit of an idea, a conceptual idea to, how big those buildings will be, not in height, obviously, but again, how much the property. And I gotta say, been around a long time in Grimsby now, but walking along there, people always just, they reference that Mr. Sani's property, it's a fifth wheel property. Well, it's that plus. And again, just walking out there, and then I thought, oh yeah, that's the old Hunt Club property too, that Mr. Lasani has purchased too. So I just want to thank all those involved for having the opportunity to spend some time out there and really get a really good perspective of it. And hearing the discussions on the plans for the waterfront trail and the amenities to it, I think it's going to be a great community asset for Grimsby. I mean, on my motorcycle on the weekend, I rode out to Burlington, Smith Park. Wow, what a busy spot again, even with COVID. But I think we've got something, a real gem here with the waterfront developers. So again, I just want to say thank you very much. Never done that process before with developers. I think it's great. It gets everybody a real good touch of reality there. So anyways, I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
Councillor Vardy?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, to thank Mr. Lasani and his team, William, and, for reaching out to us and really making an effort to work with us and listen to us and make compromises and, suggestions that were, quite beneficial to us. And just want to tell you how much that is appreciated. And you're forgiven for not recreating San Sebastian. But thank you. Well done.
Councillor Dunstall?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Antonetta. When I was looking at the SGL report, page 34 is the second last paragraph, because I've heard some numbers tonight, and I looked at this. This is to do with proposed development consists of 5 mixed-use apartment buildings comprised of 6 towers, and the height of the towers are 18, 22, 12, 14, and 14. Is that a typo? Because I just heard 16, and I heard 16 before, and I thought didn't remember 3 14-stories buildings. So is that a mistake? That's on page 34. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask perhaps Mr. Lowe's to look at page 34 of the report and just confirm what numbers we have there and whether there's a typo that needs to be corrected, please.
Through your worship, I'm just looking at the figure 3 and 4 of the zoning bylaw, figure 3 and 4 of the report, which are the proposed zoning bylaw. And I have on at 18, going west to east, 18, 22, 14, 12, 14, and 14. I don't have 16. So that's what we have in our report as the recommended bylaw.
Oh, because I heard 16 tonight, so I thought, yeah. So is it 3 14s? There's no 16 story.
There's no 16 story.
Okay. So maybe I just didn't hear right. Thank you for your clarification.
Councillor Sharp?
Thanks, Mayor Jordan. So my next question, what I want to talk about, and this is a bit for information for the public and the people that live in that area. beyond community benefits as Parkland dedication. And I've had some discussions with town staff about Parkland, and we've made some estimations. So we already have some money in Parkland dedication that's dedicated specifically to that neighborhood from developments that have happened in that neighborhood. And my colleague, Councillor Cadwell, talked about Spencer Smith Park in Burlington, and I've been talking about since before the election, I was coming around to council, having like a real waterfront park in Grimsby. And I went to school in London, and they have like a park called Victoria Park there. It's a big park. It's downtown in London, but it's got a band shell, and they have like a surface that they use in the summer for sports and camps and stuff, and then in the winter they freeze it, and they have skating outdoors right in front of this band shell. And at New Year's Eve they have like a band, and they count down, and so I'm dreaming maybe, or I thought I was dreaming, because I'm like, wow, I'm an estimator in my professional life, and I know how much things like that cost. And I was like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have something like this, right? And I thought it was a dream. And then some of the discussions I've been having about the amount of Parkland dedication that will come from this development, added to the Parkland money that we already have saved up, like I was blown away. Like we're talking about like a waterfront park that it's going to set us different from the municipalities around us. This is going to be a place to go. Like it's going to be somewhere. And the parking thing, like we need more, and we can add more. But this is going to be such a great place to go. And I'm wondering if town staff, we had some small discussions just last week on how long it would take to set a park up like this. And we talked about phasing it in by completing the waterfront trail first, and then moving towards like a large waterfront trail park. Like, can staff explain that? I might not be so great at explaining, so.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Sharp. I think, we've worked closely with our teams at Parks and Rec, and there is some exciting stuff that we were able to share with council about the parks and getting the park done first, and then having the development. And then we also had the developer be willing to help us deliver on those parks quickly, efficiently, and in a cost-effective manner. Always, of course, with our Parks and Rec team in the lead. So there's a lot of exciting ideas out there, and they can certainly come to fruition. I think if it's helpful, Councillor Sharp, through you, Mayor Jordan, we'd be happy to have Sarah come back to council, present the exciting presentation that was completed, and give everybody an idea of all of that information, and then also really make something available to the public that we can share with our residents so that they too can see and get excited about this future community and this future community asset for all of Grimsby. That may be an outcome of this development, depending on what happens and what council's decision is. So happy to share all that information, Councillor Sharp, with the public, and also arrange for an additional presentation from our Parks and Recreation team as well.
Okay, thank you, Antonetta. So I really look forward to hearing some more about that. I personally have had some discussions with our town staff about like the opportunities that we're going to have, and this is something like, it's not just a little deal. Like we're talking first phase, which will come like in the immediate like future, within a couple of years. I mean, nothing happens quickly, but like we'll complete that waterfront trail all the way to the water treatment plant, and like there'll be a 5-kilometer loop around, and then it may be able to go further towards the west, like almost connecting, eventually, hopefully connecting to 50 Point Conservation Area. And we have a small public beach at the end of Kelson Road. And so like, if we can connect to that beach, Kelson Road, in my opinion, and I grew up in Ward 4, and I went to school at Smith School. So like Kelson Beach, it's the sandiest beach in Grimsby. It's the most flat plain, like the most area where you can sit and lay in the sun. You can set a tent up if you have kids. Like, it's a lot of our beaches are getting underwater. A lot of them have a lot of driftwood washed up onto them. A lot of them have a lot of rocks and pebbles on them. And Kelson Beach, it's number one. It's the best, and it's in my ward. So I'm happy about that. But as we start to connect these things together, like this, as this neighborhood completes, it's really going to be something, and it's going to be different. It's a whole new world compared to the way that neighborhood used to be. That used to be just bulrushes and like grass up to your knee. Every property was just like uncut grass for years, and so now we're going to we've already started to build like a nice community down there, and it's way more dense than what we have in town, but that's the way that neighborhood was designed. And so I think that this development begins to complete that neighborhood, and I think that some of the development.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp.
And Parkland would be. I'm almost done, Mayor Jordan. I think that it will be a necessary thing for us to get there, and I think it's going to take 3 to 5 to 10 years for us to really round it out and complete it. But we're going to see something nice there. So thank you.
Councillor Bothwell.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. I just would like to clarify, and this again is with Antonetta, that the zoning amendment that we're approving in principle tonight, Schedule X and Schedule Y, do indicate the building heights of 18, 22, 14, 12, 14, and 14. Although the official plan permits now heights up to 22, with this zoning bylaw, if we approve this tonight, can we be reassured that these heights will be respected?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, those will be the requirements of the zoning bylaw. If it's implemented, those heights will be the requirement. They're the ones that we've gone back and forth with our peer reviewer, and those are, unless there's some error that we're not aware of, those will be the heights that need to be respected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, just want to again thank Fred, Dave, and William, and we're looking forward to moving on this. I'll read the resolution again. Moved by Councillor Frake, second by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that report PA 20-24 regarding staff supplementary report, official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision applications be received, and the drawn boundary of Block 5 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision which conflicts with the stream corridor be resolved, with changes to Block 9 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision to the satisfaction of the town, region, and NPCA, and that the developer purchased land from the town to facilitate the realignment of the road right-of-way and to dedicate those lands within the proposed new public road to the town, and to purchase lands forming the old Winston Road right-of-way to combine with blocks 1 and 2 on the proposed draft plan of subdivision in accordance with the requirements of the Municipal Act and applicable town policy, and that an official plan amendment in the form of attached as Appendix C to the peer review report be approved, and that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 362 and 398 North Service Road, generally in the form set out in Appendix A, as shown on figures 3 and 4 in the peer review report, be approved in principle, and that the reading of the bylaw occur once recommendations 2 and 3 are met and the community benefit is included in the bylaw in accordance with the provisions of section 9.4 of the official plan, and that the draft plan of subdivision be approved subject to the draft plan conditions set out in Appendix B to the peer review report. Recorded vote, and clerk will take over.
Councillor Bothwell,
Yes.
Counselor Dunstall,
Yes.
Counselor Frake,
Yes.
Counselor Cadwell,
Yes.
Counselor Ritchie,
Yes.
Counselor Sharp,
Yes.
Counselor Vane,
Yes.
Counselor Vardy,
Yes.
Mayor Jordan.
Yes.
That's carried.
All right. We have notice of motions. All right. And we move to section 11, notice of motions. First notice of motion, subject closed session discussion, acquisition, requested by Councillor Vane. Resolved that the closed session discussion regarding acquisition of new parkland be approved. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the November 16th Committee of the Whole meeting. Notice of motion, closed reports, disposition requested by Councillor Vane. Resolved that staff be directed to bring a closed report in regards to the disposition of asset and land and its financial implications. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the November 16th Committee of the Whole meeting. The third notice of motion is vehicle parking permit plan system requested by Councillor Frake. Whereas many residential homeowners in Grimsby Beach area don't have any dedicated driveways or parking spaces for their vehicles, and whereas anyone who doesn't reside in the Grimsby Beach area can currently occupy parking spaces anytime for unlimited time periods in these areas, and whereas our tax-paying homeowners and residents should be entitled to a minimum of one unencumbered parking space where they reside. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to investigate and propose a vehicle parking permit plan/system for those streets where residents are negatively affected. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the November 16th Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor
Mr. Mayor,
Vardy?
Yeah, I asked that I sent a notice of motion to Sarah if she could add it on. Thank you.
Yes, we have that. So it's a notice of motion. Whereas brought by Councillor Vardy, whereas a council, we are committed to openness and transparency. Whereas integrity commissioner complaints are serious undertakings which reflect on the behavior of council members. Whereas frivolous and vexatious complaints are costly to the taxpayer, be it resolved that all integrity commissioner complaints, whether won, lost, a draw, or withdrawn, or deemed not to be further investigated, be made public so that transparency is achieved and frivolous and vexatious complaints are not proffered. I acknowledge that this notice of motion will be given consideration at the November 16th Committee of the Whole meeting. The next meeting of our Committee of the Whole is scheduled for November 16th at 6:30 p.m. And this meeting is adjourned. We will be coming back to our regular committee meeting regular council meeting in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'd like to call council meeting to order right now, and we'll start with playing of the national anthem. All rise. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none?
Mayor Jordan,
Yes.
So I don't have any interest on this agenda, but I will be abstaining from the vote on the minutes from November 2nd. I have a interest in that, but I disclosed it in those minutes.
All right, that will be noted.
Okay, thanks.
Now we're moving to approval of the agenda. Need a mover and seconder. Councillor Frey, Councillor Vardy. Seeing no changes, I'll read the resolution. Moved by Councillor Frey, second by Councillor Vardy. Resolved that the agenda for the council meeting of November 9th, 2020 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for approval of the November 2nd Committee of the Whole and Council. Councillor Dunstall and Councillor Cadwell. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, seconded by Councillor Cadwell. Resolved that the Committee of the Whole minutes of November 2nd, 2020 and the Council minutes of November 2nd, 2020 be approved. All in favor? That's carried. Now we're moving to the announcement period section. And I just have one announcement. The Corporate Services Committee met at the region today, and there was a presentation from our West Lincoln Memorial Hospital Foundation Committee. And it was met very well. It was a presentation that went really well at Corporate Services. And we're happy to report that the region has taken our requests very seriously, and they actually passed it to move forward to the regular council meeting of November 19th. So we hope to approve that. There is a significant funding amount from the region. It is variable, so I don't have the exact numbers right now, but that's moving forward to council, regional council for the 19th. So it went very well. It was an excellent job done by the mayors and regional councilors of West Niagara, as well as the CAOs. So as I said, it went really well. So up next, we have Councillor Sharp.
So I just have one announcement. I made it already earlier at Committee of the Whole. At some point, we're going to be forming a community benefits working group down at the Grimsby on the Lake. I've already had a few emails from people asking to be on this committee. We haven't, I'm sure there'll be an application and a selection process. You can email me at dsharp@grimsby.ca, or you can find me on Facebook and I can get back to you there. I'll probably post about it, and I'm sure the town of Grimsby will post about it when we do advertise for this committee. But if you're interested, this is a real fun way to get involved in the community. Like we're gonna build things that will benefit that neighborhood, your neighborhood, if you live down there. And what a great way to sit with a group of people and take part in your community and really get to see something go. So thanks for the people who've already emailed me, and anybody else, contact myself or Councillor Bothwell or town staff, and it'd be great to have you apply for the committee. Thanks.
Councillor Vardy.
Thank you. Just two things. One, another gentle reminder to get your flu shot. It is flu season. It's not too late. So I'll probably remind you one more time and then I'll leave you alone. And the second thing is I'm getting a lot of inquiries about the Christmas parade. And I'm just wondering if we could get an update from, I guess, our CAO or our director of Parks and Recs about what is going to happen for this year. Thank you.
Councillor Cadwell?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jordan. I don't know if you want to speak to this. Maybe I know myself, and I don't know if some other councillors received some complaints from residents in the community with regards to there kind of being, people are being, that aren't wearing, or sorry, that have medical reasons for not wearing masks through this COVID-19 pandemic. And I just wonder if you were going to speak to it, or did you want me to speak to it? I think it came to you first, I believe.
Go ahead. You're very welcome to speak on it.
All right. I just want to, just for the public, there are some people in the community that that have a medical exemption for wearing masks indoors or for whatever reasons. And I didn't ask the reasons when people called and complained that they're being somewhat harassed by people, which isn't fair. It isn't, they have a legal medical exemption that the reason they're not wearing them. And I'm sure they're taking all the best precautions they can too. So I guess I'm just reaching out to the public. Please be compassionate, considerate to other people if they're not wearing masks. I'm sure most people are very diligent and respectful to wearing them for all the right reasons. So yeah, that's all I'll say on that. So again, let's treat everybody with some dignity and some class too. So the other thing I just want to say, again, wearing plaid for Dad, November month for prostate cancer. I know a lot of people are getting involved with growing mustaches, sponsoring. So anybody out there, if you want to look to make a donation to prostate cancer, look to see, there's a lot of sponsor sheets out there for people. So anyways, please donate as much as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Vane.
I just want to make a comment, not to challenge Councillor Sharp. He keeps saying to email himself or Councillor Bothwell, because of the upcoming potential ward realignment, and plus the fact that some wards do touch on the Lausanne project too, I would like to be wait until we actually make a decision on who's going to be on that committee before we have people start emailing us. Reason being is I think that Ward 3 residents will have a very, well, I know they do anyways, already have very vested interests and concerns about the Lausanne project because it is right on the edge of Ward 3. So I'm going to suggest that we hold off on people sending it to, unless they want to send it to all of council. But I do think we need some representation from more than just one ward. I do believe that other wards are going to be affected. So just my suggestion, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vane. Councillor Bothwell.
I appreciate, I just want to comment again on Councillor Vane's comment there. I appreciate where he's coming from. And I think that there's going to be ample opportunity for community members in all of the wards to put forward their name if they're interested in contributing to what the community benefits would be. It's not supposed to complain about what's happening and what the growth is. It's to be a positive group to talk about what positive community facilities and items we can bring into the community to enhance it. So it's a great good news story about an additional benefit that we can bring into this development and into the area. And I'm sure that there'll be opportunities for those in abutting wards and elsewhere to put their name forward when planning staff make that call. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further announcements, I just want to add one because it's very time sensitive. Remembrance Day is coming up on Wednesday, and we are having a virtual ceremony this year, which can be viewed by it should be available from our website and from the Legion. So both ways, I do believe. And the Lancaster is going to be coming, flying over the same day. So you can watch the Lancaster from anywhere in Grimsby. So celebrating or remembering Remembrance Day on the 11th at 11 a.m. We can do it across all of town with a 2-minute silence, and look forward to virtually making this the best Remembrance Day ever, because in this day, even more than ever, we really realize that so many people sacrificed for our freedom and the freedom we have today. So just thank you very much, and look forward to people watching on Wednesday. Our next council meeting is scheduled for November 16th, 2020, following the Committee of the Whole meeting. Need a mover and seconder for our confirming bylaw. Councillor Vane, Councillor Sharp. Moved by Councillor Vane, second by Councillor Sharp. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-86 inclusive, and that same be read a first time. All in favor? That's carried. Need a mover and seconder for second and third readings. Councillor Dunstall, Councillor Frake. Moved by Councillor Dunstall, second by Councillor Frake. Resolved that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 20-86 inclusive, read a first time, now be read a second and third time, and finally passed, and the mayor and town clerk do sign and seal the same, and rule of council to the contrary notwithstanding. All in favor? That's carried. Meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone. Thank you.